If you were to stand on the banks of the River Thames on a freezing winter night in 1776, you would not hear the gentle lap of the tide. Instead, you would hear the clanking of heavy iron, the sound of dry coughing, and low human groans echoing through the thick fog. Before you stands no majestic merchant ship, nor a proud man of war bound for battle. What looms in the mist is a colossal wooden hulk, stripped of its masts, blackened and rotting like a chained leviathan tethered to the riverbed. This is a prison ship, or as the locals whispered in dread, the hulks. While London on the shore was stepping into the gleaming age of industry, where high society dressed in fine silk and sipped tea in brightly lit parlors, just a few yards away, floating in the dark waters, the British government had created a living hell. These ships were not built to carry souls to freedom. They were floating tombs where tens of thousands entered and few ever returned. By the late 18th century, London was the beating heart of the world, a sprawling, wealthy metropolis. But beneath its grand facade lay a growing shadow. Poverty forced the desperate into crime, and English law was enforced by what was chillingly known as the Bloody Code. Stealing a single loaf of bread or a handkerchief could cost you your life at the gallows or see you banished forever. London's prisons, like the infamous Newgate, were overflowing to the point of collapse. The British government had previously solved this by shipping convicts off to the American colonies, but when the American Revolution broke out, the newly independent nation closed its doors. Britain found itself in a crisis. The cities were bursting with prisoners, and the state desperately needed a dump for human trash. Their solution was not to build new prisons, but to turn their eyes to the river. Decayed warships, discommissioned after years of fighting the French, were dragged to the river and abandoned. Workers sawed off their masts, sealed their gun ports, and converted their hulls into floating cages. It was meant to be a temporary fix. That temporary solution would last for 80 years. Imagine you are one of those newly convicted prisoners. Shackles cut deep into your ankles, their weight dragging you down as guards herd you into a small rowing boat. You push through the gloom toward that towering black mass. The moment your boots hit the damp, slippery planks of the hulk, the first thing you hit is the stench. It is a nauseating cocktail of rotting wood, stale gunpowder, raw sewage, and the unwashed bodies of hundreds of men. As the guards shove you down into the dark bowels of the ship, the only light comes from the faint flicker of a lantern. Space once meant for 100 sailors is now crammed with over 500 souls. There are no beds, only layers of tangled hammocks or the cold, wet floorboards. Below deck, the air is so thick you can barely breathe. In summer, the hold turns into a stifling oven. In winter, icy winds from the Thames seep through the cracks, cutting straight to your bones. And yet, that is not the worst of it. Every morning before sunrise, the harsh clang of a bell shatters the quiet. You wake with iron still biting your skin. Breakfast is a hunk of stale bread crawling with weevils and a tin of water scooped straight from the Thames, a river that serves as London's open sewer and now your drinking source. As daylight breaks, prisoners are herded down into the thick river mud. Their task: scrape silt, dredge the riverbed, and drive heavy wooden piles to build docks for the expanding British Empire. For 12 grueling hours a day, you toil with a 10-pound iron ball chained to your leg.
If you slow down or collapse from exhaustion, the guard's whip bites down instantly. At sunset, you're forced back into the dark depths of the ship, and in that darkness, a silent killer goes to work. Packed tightly in filth, diseases sweep through the decks like wildfire: cholera, tuberculosis, and the most lethal of all, typhus, known as jail fever. If one man falls ill tonight, half the deck will be dead by next week. There are no doctors, no medicine, and no dignity. When a prisoner dies, his body is dragged out and dumped in a shallow pit along the shore, or simply left for the tide to wash away into the dark. Yet for the men aboard the hulks, the physical agony pales in comparison to the mental torture. These ships were designed as mere waiting rooms before the government could pack prisoners onto new vessels destined to Australia, a land on the far side of the world. Every single day, the condemned stared at the horizon, dreading the day they would be cast out to a wild continent, never to see their homeland again. For many, that day never came. The mortality rate aboard the hulks spiked to 1 in 3. Countless lives flickered out right here, inside floating cages within sight of London's warm city lights. Some lost their minds. Others, weighed down by heavy chains, hurled themselves into the dark waters of the Thames, begging death to finally set them free. This dark nightmare continued for decades, until the Victorian era dawned and the whispers of such brutality grew into an unbearable public uproar. Finally, in 1857, the last of the hulks was dismantled, bringing an end to one of the most disgraceful chapters in British history. Today, if you take a scenic cruise down the River Thames, sipping champagne and watching the city lights shimmer on the water, close your eyes for a brief moment. Beneath those calm, dark waters, beneath the mud along the banks you walk past, lie the forgotten chains and nameless bones of those who perished. History never truly disappears. It merely sinks beneath the tide, waiting for someone to dive down and pull it back into the light. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. What historical era or secret location would you like us to uncover next? Leave a comment down below. See you in the next video.